Hello and welcome to Annecy. That's the last French you'll hear for the rest of the next hour and a half. Between Wallace and Gromit, Angry Kid, Shaun the Sheep, Rocky and all the jailbirds of Chicken Run, the Pirate Captain, the folks at Aardman Animation are responsible for some of the most beloved and eccentric characters in animation of the last 40 years. Along the road, they've collected 4 Oscars for their work. And in the next hour and a quarter, we'll be looking back over those 4 decades and forward a bit at sort of what lies ahead for Aardman Animation. I'm Peter de Bruges, Chief Film Critic of Variety magazine, and it's my pleasure to introduce you guys to the 2 co-founders of Aardman Animation, Peter Lord and David Sproxton. Peter Lord, David Sproxton. I'll leave it to you guys.
Yeah. So some might call us the big cheeses of Aardman, and that's probably the right technical term. And it made me think that what we're going to get is a kind of plat du jour today. You're not going to have much choice, but it's going to be haute cuisine. I'm the hors d'oeuvre. Pete's going to be the main course, as we in England call it, the meat and potatoes. And then dessert will be a plat de fromage, and Peter will be the pickle between us 2 fromages. So we'll have some Q&A. So it's coming up to 40 years that Pete and I have been working together. And the question you all ask, how the hell do you manage that? A true lifetime. And mostly it's because we have complementary skills. I think very early on, we recognized that we suited each other's skill set in that I'm more behind the camera and producer and organizer. Pete's more in front of the camera, artist, writer, and animator extraordinaire. And I think that's probably been a success of that long partnership. And then collectively, together, we've both brought on other people, other skills, helped promote talent, found new people, and kind of build the company with basically a kind of art and craft-based approach. And that's how you get to be a 40-year-old company. It's quite surprising how quickly it's all gone. So that's the hors d'oeuvre, the meat and potatoes. I hand you over to Peter Lord. Thank you. Thanks, Dave. Good. Right. Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. Lovely to see you. So, we're celebrating 40 years. In fact, one more click. We're celebrating 40 years, and I'm going to sort of take you through some of the history and try not to get bogged down in ancient history, and present to you, I hope, like a portrait of the company in all its different aspects. So 40 years of play, I thought that was a nice idea because I liked the idea that it's not all hard work. But then we gave it a subtitle for Annecy, 1 frame at a time. Yes. So because of the fact, of course, that we make animated films, stop motion films. Because we're in Annecy, as we are, I thought it would be only polite for you guys to show you, to start with a rabbit, right? Every Annecy show must have a rabbit. You can all exercise your lungs. So this will be the first clip is for Annecy only.
Hello? Come forward, there you are.
Okay.
So the rabbit, of course, from The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, which was premiered here, I think, back in, I can't remember how long ago, 10 years ago, quite a long time ago. We've had a lovely association with this festival. We've loved coming to it. I first came here, and I think in sort of the early 80s, I can't remember, about 83 maybe. And this was the year that Nick made A Close Shave, and we came here to show it again, to premiere it at Annecy. And in those days of film, remember film, some of you? It was still wet. It had just been processed, and we brought it from the laboratories and raced here just in time. So a close run thing. So the first, okay, that was another starter. When you do a presentation, everyone knows that conventionally in the world of animation, we show a show reel. It's a commercial tool often, but for me, it has an important point because it's a whole bunch of work. The reel I'll show you covers the 40 years, sort of, and the main point, the whole big point, is it's not just about me and Dave, and it's not just about Nick Park. It's about a big group of artists and filmmakers, animators, directors, all those things. And also, it's not all plasticine, modeling clay, pâte à modeler. It's not all that, because we work in many, many different styles, because it's very important to us to stay, to keep changing, to be eclectic, and to introduce new people. So I will show you now a showreel.
Are we sitting comfortably?
So what you're seeing there, very obviously you're seeing stop motion, and you're seeing CG, you're seeing drawn animation, and all kinds of multimedia things in between. And you're seeing the work of, well, I wasn't counting exactly, but more than 20 different directors and countless different animators. So that's my theme. We're a team, we're a studio full of creative people, and we love to make great films. So now, back to the past. Now I can indulge in some good old nostalgia. So this film used to be on everybody's showreel once upon a time. It's pixelation, right? It's a bunch of us and our friends in a field somewhere in England, making ourselves animated. And I show it because it's just to say that we were experimenting. You know, we were playing around with animation, and we were at the time of this, I don't know, 17 years old, something like that. That's me back then. That's me back then. And we were playing around. We were finding out what animation could be, how to do it. We had a 16mm film camera, and it's hard now to realize how important that was then, because every one of you in the audience has the ability on your phone to make an animated film. It's fantastically common now, and it's wonderful. You know, that all around the people of all ages, you know, from tiny kids upwards, making animation. It's so common. It's everywhere. But when we were at school, it was extremely uncommon. It was a very, very rare thing, and we had this camera. Dave's dad had this camera, which allowed us to get into stop frame animation. And as I say, we were playing around. Early on, then, we became Aardman. And this is a word that needs some explanation, because, it's our name now. We're very proud of it, but it doesn't mean very much. It means almost nothing. When we were at school, we thought that there's a South African animal called an aardvark. It's an anteater, and it lives in the ground in a burrow and eats ants, obviously. And it's hard to convey now. I mean, you're not laughing when I say aardvark, and that's all right. You know, but it seemed to us very, very funny at the time. So we took the Aard of aardvark and the Man of Superman and cleverly put them together to make this superhero. That's the first film that we ever sold to anybody. So we made that when we were still at high school, and we sold it to a BBC TV program, a program for children, in fact, specifically a program for deaf children, a very interesting project. It was called Vision On, and we sold that film. And what I think is interesting about it, several things are interesting. One is, you may have noticed, it's not very good. It's not very well animated, and the timing is kind of terrible. And also it's very dirty looking. So it's technically not very good, and the story it's not very good, but it's good enough for them to buy it. And I often think about this in hindsight. I think, wow, if it had been slightly worse than that, then they wouldn't have bought it, because it was shown on network TV, so it had to be good enough. If it hadn't been good enough, they wouldn't have bought it, and we wouldn't be here today, probably, because there we go. That's me and Dave making an Aardman film, and you can see that 16mm camera, of which I spoke, and a homemade camera stand. And down here, just out of sight in the dark, is a kitchen table on which we worked. If the film hadn't been good enough, if it hadn't had enough of a story, we wouldn't have got started. And I say it just to make the obvious point that story is so important, in animation. It was then and it is now. So here we are, two eager youths, obviously having great fun with animation. And as I said before, doing a thing which was very unusual at the time. When we were at high school, and indeed when we are at university, we didn't know anybody else that was doing animation. I mean, now you're surrounded by people doing animation, but we didn't know about that or this world. That was us in about 1971 or something like that. This is us today. And here's some of the team today. So this is at the headquarters building in Bristol where we work, and this is the team. Part of the team. They run the company. We make in this site we do computer animation, we do development, we do digital and online work, a whole bunch of different things, technical stuff as well. There's another studio as well. This is in the middle of Bristol. There's another studio in the north of the city, and that's where we make feature films. And this is where we're making Pirates. Notice the very large head here. Yeah, this is where we're making Pirates. Obviously, a very big team there. So when we were making the Pirates movie, we were probably employing about 500 people. That was a big, big, big setup. And I want to now go back in time, back towards school days. So there was about 500 people there. This is just about the time we started to make Chicken Run, which was when the company was a lot smaller, and when we kind of divided into half to make Chicken Run. This was about the time we moved to our studio by the dockside in Bristol. This is us celebrating the end of a music video called Stagehammer by Peter Gabriel, obviously in high spirits. This is us on holiday. We always went on holiday together back in the day. Here we are. This is the entire team in about 1987, something like that, I think. And this is the entire team about 1984. And this is the entire studio in 1983. So we grew steadily. It's been a steady and a wonderful growth. The interesting thing is that many of the faces changed, of course, but this guy here is Richard Starzak, and there he was in 1983, and here he is with some other people. Yes, there's Richard, there he is, when they made Shaun the Sheep. So it's rather wonderful that the guy that joined us, he joined us straight from college, doing just helping out around the studio and doing a little bit of animation, and over the course of years he's evolved to be a super talented filmmaker, and he created the TV series of Shaun the Sheep, and he co-directed with Mark Burton. So that's Richard, that's Mark. The two of them directed together the Shaun the Sheep movie, which we made with Studio Canal last year, and was a great source of pride. So I'll just show you a clip from Shaun the Sheep now. So I don't know how many of you saw the film, but the big, brave thing, the interesting idea was to have an 80-minute film with no dialogue at all. So it's just the whole story is conveyed by music and effects and so on, which was, a big, brave decision. And I was so happy and so proud that people going to see it, didn't comment on the fact there was no words. They were so absorbed in the storytelling that that's what they took away. I can tell you that making a film without any words at all is fantastically difficult for an 18-minute film, because at some stage there's some idea, some concept you want to convey, and you would give £1 million for one line of dialogue, but we decided not to do that. So they were incredibly ingenious and clever. So bits of the dog there. His face, at least, is made of clay. And I'm talking about clay now because here we are. Here's my visual aid. This is Morph. He's made of plastic. I'll introduce him properly later. But it was a very, very important moment for us. It's looking terrible. I'll start again. Yeah. It was a very important moment for us when we got into the third dimensions, when we started making a clay film. And I'm going to show you a film that we saw when we were still at school, when we were still at high school. We didn't make this. This is by somebody else. So that's a film called Clay, or The Origin of Species, and it's made by an American animator called Elliot Noyes. And Dave and I saw that when we were still at school, and it's rather interesting for a younger audience. You have to try to imagine, there was a time that when you saw something on TV, you'd see it once, and then it was gone, and you'd never see it again. Just like real life, So in real life, things happen and then they're gone. Well, that's how it used to be in TV as well. Because in the the late '60s, they never showed repeats on TV. That wasn't they hadn't thought of that, And there was no video recording. There was no VHS, and so there was certainly no internet. So if you saw a thing like that, you couldn't see it again. You couldn't catch the moment. So we saw that and were fascinated by it, and fascinated enough to try animating with clay. That's why I show it. But in the later years, when the internet came along, I eventually found it. It took a long time to find because I was Googling, old clay movies because I didn't know anything about it. I found it eventually and discovered that the director was this guy called Elliot Noyes. And I looked him up and was sad to find he died, because I was very keen to just contact him and say thank you, really, because I thought it would be interesting for him. He didn't have a page on IMDb or anything, so he seemed like an amateur. And so it was a great surprise when I went to a film festival in San Francisco just 2 or 3 months ago, when this guy came up and said, I'm Elliot Noyes, and I made that film. As you can see, not dead in any way. In fact, he's looking fine, actually. And he kind of sneakily changed his name. So it was his father who died, and he calls himself Eli Noyes now, and still going strong. Anyway, I mentioned that because I was so happy to meet him. I was delighted because it was amazing. Really, well, not least because he was back from the dead. But also because he was. It'd been very, very important to us. And I just wanted to say the serious point is that in the world of animation, there aren't very many entirely original ideas. that's not how it works. Ideas are passed on from hand to hand down the years, and this guy had invented something that we saw it and we copied it, and I know for a fact that people since then have seen what we did and used it. And I love that fact. I love the idea that ideas are carried from hand to hand like a baton in a race. We never made a film like that. We didn't try to copy it, but we had the simple idea of using the modeling clay material, and we created the character who I just carelessly smashed up that we call Morph. So I'll show you a new film from last year with a character called Morph. And Morph has been going himself for nearly 40 years. So you can see that Morph comes from the same sort of school as Shaun the Sheep, in the sense that there's no dialogue, sort of pure animation. I like the fact that you can see it's clay. There's no secret about it. You know what you're looking at. You're looking at a lump of modeling clay which seems to come alive. But we had another idea, a very important idea to us, and again, an idea that came from somebody else. Again, an idea we picked up from the generation before, and that was the idea of using real soundtracks. When I say real soundtracks, I mean not scripted, not performed by actors, but recorded from real people in life as naturally as possible. And I'm going to show you just a clip. I'm sorry, I'm not going to show you the whole thing, so forgive me. A clip of Nick Park's film Creature Comforts, and that's when we took the idea of clay characters, the same technique, the same material, but this new idea of getting them to lip sync to recorded soundtrack. So anyway, this is a clip from Creature Comforts.
Sound running when you're ready.
I think they like it in the wild if they were in the wild, but I think it's much better to be in bars because, like I've said, they get fed, whereas some animals, they go for days without food.
Because the animals that are in the circus have to get on boxes and balls, but animals in the zoo, they don't have to do anything. They can do their own things by drinking and eating.
I miss a lot the food. I miss the fresh meat, because in Brazil we are predominantly carnivores. We are not, vegetarian, and we don't like potatoes. We like meat, and we like a fresh meat.
My favourite food is, I'm afraid to say, is steak. I go a long way to go and get a nice steak.
Do you like lions as well then? Do you like steaks and chips with lions with it?
Not with lions, Andrew, no. I don't like lion steak. I prefer the ordinary steak.
I'd like to live somewhere a bit hotter. I don't like getting rained on, and I don't like being cold. And I find that here I often get rained on, and I'm often cold.
Where I would like to live and to spend most of my life? In a hot country. In a hot country that I have a good weather, and that I have space, that I have trees, that I don't have only grass with pollens that give me hay fever every day. I need a space with blue skies, without that I can see the sun every day, all right? That I have nice weather, that I can just have nice water, you know, to dive, to swimming. It means a tropical country, not in an island, a cold one. It's easy. Any part of the world, but hot. Name it, and there you go.
So Nick Park made that film, I think, in 1986, and he won an Oscar for it, quite rightly. And the idea behind it, just very quickly, what's going on is he talked to people in Bristol, where we live, in our city, and he just asked them about their own lives. And so that Brazilian guy was a student who lived in Bristol and genuinely thought the food looked like dog food and the weather was terrible. So and in the same way, the gorilla was a student teacher who come from Northern Ireland, and she was just talking about her own life. They all were. And that was the funny thing, to take them spectacularly out of context and make excellent comedy out of it. So Nick won an Oscar for Creature Comforts. He also, of course, won an Oscar for these guys. So I can't very well mention the history of Aardman without mentioning Wallace and Gromit. He made 4 short films, Wallace and Gromit, and 1 feature, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. And he won 1 Oscar for Creature Comforts and 3 more Oscars for Wallace and Gromit. So really pretty good success rate there. There he is, looking very young and dashing. And I think that's probably the first one. So I'm going to show you a clip of Wallace and Gromit. I think it's only fair. You've paid to come here. And I'll show you just a little clip of what I think everyone thinks is a masterpiece, which is the wrong trousers.
What's happening? Catch me, Gromit! Well done, we did it! Ha ha!
I think that when Gromit picked up the box for spare track, there were like 5 pieces of track inside it when you picked it up. So that's the wonder of animation for you. I show it because it's very funny, it's kind of brilliant. It's quite economical, actually, to shoot, but it has a fantastic energy, nice, very good music, very good effects. It's a lovely piece of animation. Technically, stylistically, there's a lot of clay in there. A lot of this modeling material is in there because we love the look of it. You know, I love the fact that the audience can see what it is, that they can see it's clay. That, and with the small props, like even a small detail like that box that said spare track, if you look at it close up, it's very obviously a small handmade box. You know you're looking at small things and you believe they're alive at the same time. And I think somewhere in there is the magic of stop motion animation, which is why, although we make films many other ways, we make lots of CG films and fundamentally care about the story most of all. But having said that, having said story, I love very much the handmadeness of what we do, and I think it's the joy of what we do. But after making 3 Wallace and Gromit shorts, we realized that we could work for the big screen because we actually, particularly with A Close Shave, we showed it in theaters and we realized that even though the puppets are, I mean, Gromit is smaller than that. So even though the puppets are small and made of clay, and on the big screen, they look great. You know, it works really well. So it gave us the confidence to get into movie making. And in about '96, we started on our first film, which was Chicken Run. And then we made many more. As you see, bits of CG in there as well, so it's not all stop motion. But I want to celebrate the handmade aspect of what we do at its best, because I think it's a very lovely thing. Apart from anything else, it means the studio where we work is a really great place to work. I feel very sorry for most of you that work in CG because, you know, I'm sure you've made some lovely films, but it's a bit boring, really, because you're sitting at a computer all day, you know, which is, you know, excellent, but kind of dull. But the stop motion studio, at its best, is a very, very dynamic place. It's a place where things are happening, things are being made, people are working with clay and wood and metal and paint, and they are active. They're physically active. It's a wonderfully active environment. Anyway, so I'm going to show you one of those behind the scenes things. This is behind the scenes, the making of the Pirates, and I show it. It's very quick, I have to tell you, but it indicates, it suggests all the interesting things that happen in our world, all the different techniques that we practice, and I'm including actors and musicians in there as well. And you know, it creates the illusion that we're having fun the whole time, which we are most of the time. Yeah. Okay. So for me, that's a tribute to all those different crafts. Some of some of them working on computers, absolutely. All those different crafts, all working together to create this amazing organism, which is the studio. Now, having said that, much as I love clay, which I do, and love stop motion, it's very important that we experiment as well. Important to stay alive creatively, to keep advancing, and also very simply because not everyone wants to work in that material. So we have animators and directors that have different visions, and it's important for us to find the space for them to share their vision. One such vision is a guy called Darren Walsh, and he made Angry Kid. So I'm going to show you a quick Angry Kid film.
One hand. Way. No hand. Oh. I did a stunt. I feel. Oh God, what's that doing there? Oh God, it's the bone. Oh no, look at the bone. Oh no. Oh. Oh God, no. Oi! Give it back. Give it. My bone. Give it back. Give your bloody dog and give me my bone back. I feel a bit jubby.
So that's Darren Walsh doing his own thing, his own extraordinary idea. The main actor is pixelated, a human being treated like a puppet, and the faces, the masks, were replaced frame by frame. So, if you told me that was going to work, I wouldn't have believed it, but it does. This is another film by another guy called Tom Parkinson. Again, the point being, he's doing his own thing, following his own instinct, which is very, very unlike Wallace and Gromit, but very good fun. I put up this warning, but you'll be okay. Yeah, yes, no, yeah, you're okay.
Bloody marvellous! G'day, and welcome to the Bushcraft Alphabet. Today we're going to be looking at the letter F. Here are some of the most important Fs for survival in the bush.
Fire.
Don't muck about with the traditional method. You might cause a bushfire. These days I prefer to carry one of these little buggers.
All right, mate. Nice one.
Fluid.
Now take a look at this little guy, the crying ninny, or Frogus forlornus. Now he can blub up to a litre of liquid every hour, and with these beautifully crafted ninny thimbles, you'll never go thirsty. 4 colours to collect.
Food.
If I'm not mistaken, this burrow belongs to a fromage, otherwise known as an Australian cheese otter. Cut the little bugger open from his heart to his arsehole. Fill him with all the leftover cheese in your sack. He's a resilient little critter. Give him a moment to do his stuff, and hey presto, piping hot cheesy melt.
First aid.
In many ways, the bush is just like a bloody great pharmacy. You've just got to know where to look. And you've got to have respect for the environment around you.
Oh, cheeky.
Raspberry flavour. Let's see what other Fs we can find in the bush. A friend with a fiddle. Take it away, Barney. Piss-prone fisticuff.
Oh, I've wet myself.
Foul-mouthed fuddy-duddy. False-nosed water rat. The fuck me, fuck you.
Fuck me.
Fuck you. Fijian fairy penguin. Full-fat fucking
Thank you.
thumper.
And again.
Fan-fucking-tastic.
I'm Freaky Frankie, the fur-long-fingered flange fiddler.
So that was Tom Parkinson. That's what he wanted to do. We've recently done a very exciting and interesting project with Google Spotlight Stories, which is a 360-degree project, kind of like a version of virtual reality, which you can experience on your phone. And we made this film. Tim Ruffle directed Special Delivery. And I show it because you know, we love to do different things. We love to experiment, and this was an amazing opportunity to go into a different world for us, a world we were unfamiliar with, a world we had to learn about. Basically, your 360-degree story. Your phone becomes the camera. You as the viewer choose where to look. And if you think about it for a few seconds, you realize it's quite mind-boggling when it comes to storytelling, because as filmmakers, we are so used to telling the audience exactly where to look. Now we have to tell them in different ways. But we made very beautiful environments. So you can see at the bottom, you see the whole environment. I'll turn that down a bit. Yeah. At the bottom, you see the whole environment, and at the top, you see what you might see on your phone at any one time. What you don't see in there, what this isn't showing, is that the rest of that environment is also populated with other things going on. I'll show you this slide. The next slide shows you some of the other things that are going on around about in that scene that you saw first, so that as a viewer, you may be watching the main character, but you have the opportunity to look around and see little side gags and mini stories that are taking place elsewhere in the same location. So it's a very, you know, visually very beautiful project, and a huge, you know, mind stretcher for us all. And luckily, it needed all the combined skills of the team at Aardman and the team at Google Spotlight to put it together, because technically it was amazing. I'm going to show you another piece of CG now. Again, carrying on with my theme that we're not all about clay. And this is rather special. Aardman in Bristol, which is where we're based, Bristol in England, we decided to go into partnership with a company in Manhattan, with Nathan Love in Manhattan. And Joe Boroscano, who is the creative genius behind Nathan Love, put together this following film to celebrate the unholy fusion of two different studios. So. So I love that. I love it because it's funny, very, very energetic, and I think it's we have a word in England which is bonkers, and I think bonkers is a splendid word, and that's a perfect example. So that's enough from me. I think we can now move on to the Q&A part of the afternoon. Thank you. I'll go here.
Yep. I'm the pickle.
Okay. Yeah.
Ma vie de cornichon,
Yeah.
I think it would be called. So when you guys started out, there was no industry to speak of animation-wise really in England, and now you guys have created over the course of 40 years a legacy, a sustainable sort of situation there. But I wanted to talk just a little bit about what the sort of business model is at Aardman, because it may not be the features necessarily that bring in the money. I'm not sure.
That first group shot, right back at the start, exemplified the whole world of other possibilities. So there's features, there's TV series, there's the occasional TV short, there's digital online, small games thing.
Commercials.
Commercials, of course.
What we now call partner content.
Right.
Because it's not just TV commercials, it's other commissioned work.
And then all the merchandising.
And the merchandise, And it's changed a lot. I mean, when we first started, it was little bits of work for TV. Channel 4 had a huge influence. And when they came on stream in the early 1980s, they were, well, almost the only channel in the world that was commissioning animation for a more adult audience. So we did a number of shorts, and that they weren't terribly lucrative, but they gave us a lot of exposure. And that brought in commercial work, TV commercial work. Wallace & Gromit grew the merchandising rights side of it. And indeed, Shaun the Sheep now is a huge sort of international franchise. So we're doing things like theme parks, big in China and Asia, an awful lot of family, what they call family entertainment centres. So that as a character has been taken on board by, well, 170 odd countries worldwide. So that drives actually quite a lot of income. So it's character-based. All the money we make comes out of developing good, strong characters and the derivatives that come from that, really.
And is it the box office that drives Aardman, or is that merchandising later on, or?
Well, you'll know how the feature film industry works probably better than I do. Actually, the box office doesn't generally give you a lot of income because the films cost quite a lot of money, and unless you're a big company like DreamWorks or
and take years, obviously.
And take years and years and years, and then you've got to recoup that. Keep the budgets down, yes. But what they do is drive marketing and awareness. So again, one of the reasons we made the Shaun the Sheep movie was actually to increase the awareness and in a way keep that franchise in a very kind of rather hard-nosed business approach, to keep that franchise rolling with a big piece of work. We haven't made a lot of money out of the film per se as yet from the box office. We'll make more money out of actually continued television sales and downloads and that kind of stuff.
Meanwhile, Shaun becomes the star of theme parks or family entertainment centers.
Exactly, yeah.
What's an example of a family entertainment center where Aardman features?
Well, we're working on stuff in the Middle East in particular, Middle East and the Far East, where shopping malls are becoming the weekend treat for the family. That's where you go in the way that multiplexes in Europe became that here. So with the newer shopping malls, they're putting in more entertainment centres for doing actually things like small live shows, small theatre spaces.
So this would be a number of dancers dressed as Shaun.
Indeed, yeah. So we've done exactly that. We've done about a 15-minute live show with Shaun. We've done a 15-minute live show with Shaun, which is in China at the moment, and it's family entertainment. That's exactly that. Yeah.
Shaun the Sheep on ice.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
We're working on it. Yeah.
I think there's a theme park in Sweden somewhere.
Yeah. It's got a Shaun themed.
Go there.
Well, how important was it, this sort of international outlook, to making Shaun the Sheep as a feature, one with no dialogue? I mean, was that part of the plan? Or?
It wasn't. No, it wasn't. There was nothing cynical about that decision at all. But we'd done a TV series for a long time, for 10 years, with Shaun the Sheep, and that's where the tradition had grown up that there was no dialogue. So, and I think that was Richard Starzak. It was his idea, and in a way, the idea was deeply buried in the theme of the thing, because the whole theme was human beings never know what's going on behind their backs and never know how smart the animals are, and so it was never human-centric. The poor old farmer was always just a stupid stooge that never knew what was happening.
Right.
The sheep were the smart ones, well, especially Sean. And that was how it developed. And when we came to make a feature film, we just stuck with it, because but it was challenging.
The humans are literally rendered dumb in that case, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's sort of the joke that is behind Gromit as well. It's like he's the brains of the operation, always saving the day.
And I think, last night we saw The Red Turtle, beautiful film, no dialogue at all. And we often refer back to the days of the silent greats and the Buster Keatons.
Right, sure.
Charlie Chaplin, particularly, fun enough, with Shaun the Sheep. Buster Keaton's very much the sort of model that we use with Shaun.
The idea of pantomime almost. Being,
that sort of thing, and trying to work out gags, set up situations which give you a lot of comedy potential.
Yeah. The Aardman personality, where does that come from? Is it a chemical sort of mix between you two? And I mean, because often it comes out of the dialogue too of the other films you've done. But obviously Nick Park is a big part of that chemistry as well.
Huge part, it is, of course, so difficult to talk about those things because they're sort of totally instinctive. So you're not aware of them. I mean. That the humour is British, we know, but what that means, I don't really know. It's hard to define what it is, but it's just profound, isn't it? It's so deep. Like it's the things that made us laugh when we were younger. It's the way we talk. English people tell jokes very, very differently to Americans, and we try to just do it our own way. Of course, you can't deny that the visual, the famous Wallace mouth,
right,
and the bug eyes helps me. Nick was always very insistent that the eyes had to be actually touching in the middle of the head. Like if they weren't touching, if by mistake a millimetre of clay appeared, that was less funny. The further apart the eyes go, the less the laughs. Yeah, but so he's a top tip for all animators. Really, move your eyes together, and everyone laughs. And then the mouth, that ridiculous, exaggerated mouth, was just he didn't do it all in one go. He experimented, and found that this big rubbery mouth was inherently funny. You laugh at Wallace before he says anything, which is a very good place.
Right.
And some of that, a bit like Creature Comfort. See that clip of the Jaguar. Nick says that of all the characters in that film, that one was the easiest to animate because the very expressive South American character gave him they just came to him. And he got, when he was doing a grand day out at college, at the film school, he'd got Peter Sallis to record the voice. And Peter Sallis has got a very, what we call, home counties accent, sort of my sort of accent. Wallace is set up in the north of England. So he put on a cod fake northern accent and made the cheese. And when Peter Sallis said the word cheese, that sort of clearly, that sort of big mouth appeared. And that sort of, so much of it came from the dialogue that he got.
Yeah.
Inspired him.
Well, how, in terms of the way that originally, when you guys were starting, when you reached the point early on where you realized you could do this for a living, that it wasn't just a sideline or a hobby, you were doing it for television on a relatively modest budget with relatively modest returns, and for a British audience. Then comes this enormous leap to Hollywood.
Yes.
And I mean, what was that shock like, or how did you guys kind of psych yourselves up for the
It was a very sort of, it was a slow leap, a slow motion leap.
Right.
Over some years, I suppose. Because we'd got. I mentioned close shave because making a close shave, we learnt to be, and I use this word with the greatest reluctance, but to industrialise the process, which is to say, a grand layout was made with one animator. A close shave was made with 8 or whatever it was. So in that sense, we learned that slowly, how to industrialise so we could shoot faster. But it was still, having said that, it was a massive shock. Yes, it was a big old.
If I understand A Grand Day Out right, that was the thesis film that Nick was making in school.
Yeah.
He invited you guys to come as guest speakers, seduced you with his wit and charms, joined the company, and finished that thesis film some odd years later at Aardman?
Yes, he had asked us, the National Film School in Beaconsfield near London, the students can ask for professional practitioners to come in, and he asked us to go into do a kind of master class. And it was a bit like the blind leading the blind, because neither Pete nor I have any formal training in what we do.
Right, right.
We saw, and he showed us this little set where Wallace is making the rocket, the little cellar set. And we invited him down a little bit later to help actually shoot some morph episodes for the TV show. And we then had got a commission to do quite a big film, a 15-minute film for Channel 4, featuring about 50 arms dealers. It was a metaphorical film set in an arms dealer's annual dinner. So lots of these puppets and DJs. And we thought, how the hell are we going to animate all these characters? We need to get some more animators.
Right.
Richard had joined us by that time. So we thought, Guy Park, I'm sure, we'll invite him down. And by the way, it's taken him forever to finish his film. So we did a deal with the film school and basically said, look, we'll help Nick if he can join us, and we can give him model makers and DOPs and editorial assistants. I think at that point he'd spent about 5 years making the film because he was doing everything himself. So he joined us in 85, and he brought his camera down and his sets down. We made this film, Babylon, this Channel 4 film. And then later in the year, we said, right, Nick, let's get on making finishing your Grand Day Out film. I think in those first 5 years, had made about 6 or 7 minutes.
Yeah.
And we finished the other 20-odd minutes in about 6 months with him. It was just, we cut out a lot of it. There was a whole scene set on the moon in some kind of fast food restaurant, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And we said, no, what the hell's that got to do with the story? Just take that out. You're never going to finish it. And he finished it actually quite quickly.
Yeah. The interesting thing about it was, the thing that appealed to us is very simple, and it's kind of surprising now, is that it was puppet animation, but the characters were expressive. And if I say that, you think, well, of course, you'd think that's how it should be. But in Britain, certainly, there was a tradition of puppet animation for kids, and puppets were very simple, and what they did mostly was they did this.
Right, a lot of the Czech animation is like that.
Yeah,
solid faces.
Yes,
Yeah.
they don't. The bodies and neither the body nor the face expressed anything. And I always remember that Nick was doing Wallace, sitting at his drawing board, and he was doing some drawings, and it wasn't working out. So we'd do a drawing and scrump it up, and then you have a think like this, and if I think like that, it's not very subtle. It's not like subtle performance, but it's performance. He was telling you what the character was thinking through performance, which now is just absolutely fundamental to what we do, but was more unusual then.
Well, I think about the way that in that Shaun the Sheep clip, it sort of telegraphs the beat of sweat, the way that he recognizes the bone. It all comes out of that sort of lesson, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of Nick coming aboard, was that sort of a big turning point for you, or?
It turned out to be, yeah. I mean, there was a quiet period when he was just the, third animator sort of thing.
Right.
But I mean, from the early days, a very, very good animator, really spectacularly, very sharp, insightful animator, and. But I think it was strange enough. It wasn't A Grand Day Out because we thought it was a very nice film when it came to it, when we finished it. But we didn't think it was as good as it now seems to be. We thought it was a good film, a good film. But it was Creature Comforts, I think, that really turned things around, wasn't it?
Yes, mainly because actually that appealed to advertising agencies. And if you'd seen the thing I did this morning on commercials, you would have seen one of the Heat Electric campaigns. And we did, based on Creature Comforts, a large number of adverts for basically the electricity board in the UK, based on that very same idea. So that's sort of what came through. In fact, Nick directed the early ones.
And was that ultimately brought in more revenue for you guys?
Absolutely, yeah. And also kind of put us on the map in ad agencies and just helped the whole, the big snowball started kind of gathering more snow as it were.
But it was quite surprising to find we had a superstar on
Yeah,
our hands.
exactly, yeah.
You know,
Right,
it
yeah.
was- it's
Who is this guy?
Yeah, you know, like, because when he won the Oscar for Creature Comforts, he was also nominated for A Grand Out at the same time.
Right,
so that,
right. He beat himself.
Pretty good, yeah.
Or lost to himself.
Yes,
in some
exactly.
cases. So both of you went to school not studying animation, English literature and history, is that right?
Geography, actually. Yeah.
Geography, sorry. And I can see directly how those two things. But on the same time, and Nick is someone who came out of a film school background, and now there are animation schools all over the world. Most of the audience here at Annecy comes from animation schools. If you had it to do over again, do you think animation school would have been the right way to prepare? Is there something to be said for the sort of liberal arts background that you had?
Well, I don't know. That's a very interesting question. I would like to have gone to art school. It would have been, you know, I didn't for sort of ridiculous domestic reasons, because the only one in Britain was a bit too close to where my parents lived, and I wanted to move further away. That was really it. But I mean, I don't know. I can't imagine how different things would have been had we done it. I certainly enjoyed the liberal arts education, and I do. You know, I'm a great believer in education. Full stop. You know, like, and we're of a generation where you just did education because you cared about something, because it really interested you, and we weren't thinking about career for a moment when we started to do it.
What does one do with a geography degree?
Well, where to start? Actually, what it did do was make you think about analysing stuff, looking at process. And problem solving. There's a whole bundle of intellectual stuff that you do. It's not just looking at rivers and glaciers and stuff. Sure. So there's a kind of training and understanding what's going on. On the side, I did a lot of stuff in places like this. I did an awful lot of theatre lighting, you know, with student theatre. I was up in the north of England. So my geography was sort of built around doing, because I was interested in light and photography, and doing theatre lighting actually is great fun, because effectively you've got a viewfinder there. You haven't got to worry about exposure, and you get to learn how to light people and things. So I did a lot of use of colour. And what I was trying to do, which we did later, was set up a scene. And we did a film called Billy Liar, a very well-known play. And there's a breakfast scene where he actually, in his imagination, machine guns his whole family. And I thought, let's just set this up to make sure it looks like it's breakfast. It is early morning. And the guys I was working with didn't quite. Well, the director got it, actually. The other guys didn't quite think what I was doing, why I wanted to put light streaming through the window and all this and make it really feel like an early morning scene, and that's what appealed to me. So you had, at college, all those facilities at your disposal, and I didn't know and use them.
Right. And when you recruit now, are you looking almost exclusively at people who've come out of animation backgrounds, or would it be surprising to hear kind of...
Well, across the company there are people from many very different backgrounds, but in the studio, especially in the feature film studio, and in CG too, they will have done animation courses, most of them, or an awful lot of them.
Right. Obviously, that experience is essential to being hired.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I certainly don't think anyone ever looks at their CV to see where they've been. It's all about what they can show. It's the real, I think, absolutely, yeah. And there is I have a slight bee in my bonnet, because in stop motion, it's very hard for people to do enough animation, because I always think it's, I compare it to...
What do you mean to do enough?
Actually, any stage in their lives, but as students...
Just because it takes so long.
It takes so long. And in English colleges, tragically, all too often, the story is, there's only one studio, and so you get it for 4 weeks, you know, or whatever it is. And the other thing is that people like to make their own puppets, which I applaud, but often a homemade puppet is really difficult to animate. So you get someone that in Britain that's done a 3-year course, and you know, Dave mentions the classic 10,000 hours to do something well. Well, these people have done, you know, a few hundred hours, a couple of hundred hours, really, and however, they just need to do more. I mean, I just think it's a practical thing, it's a manual thing, and a question of interpretation as well. And so the more you experiment, the more you learn.
We have just a couple last minutes, so if there are questions in the audience, now's your chance, and then we'll have to wrap up. Go ahead. I think there's a microphone just beside you.
Hello. Over here.
Sorry, we'll start on the side and go up to you next, sir. Go ahead.
I'm wondering if you could tell us more about your process of setting up a studio, and if earlier I saw your advertising showreel as well, and like, is that are ads playing a big part of sort of funding your studio and making it grow, and if you could tell us what sort of struggles you faced along the way.
So like as we said earlier on, economically, the studio has several different foundations. You know, one of them is advertising, absolute advertising, marketing and licensing, feature films, you know, TV commercials, digital work. So economically it stands on those now. But of course, when we started, all we had was kids' TV series was the only thing we had. So we've just evolved in this, I think, quite unusual way. Every studio, all the people that are here at Annecy, everyone's got a different story to tell, and everyone has to find their own path through the labyrinth, you know. And
But I think perhaps the point you're trying to make is, you know, should you do advertising? And I would say actually yes. Most of what we've really learned has been done doing that short form work with an agency that's got very, very high levels of expectation. They've got the money to get the quality levels up. You're dealing with, as the Stupid Buddy guys mentioned, you've got 750 frames to tell a story in 30 seconds. It's not 751 or 749. And that precision, that editorial precision is really, really good discipline. It's got to work, and it's going to be seen. So I've often said, actually, I think, certainly in Britain in the, I suppose up until the late 90s, maybe even now, I would actually say that the advertising world is probably one of the best filmmaking academies that you can actually throw yourself into, because you're going to get paid for a start, which is great. But you'll be asked to do stuff which you don't normally do, which is also great. There's a huge amount of pressure put on you to deliver really good stuff. So it challenges you the whole way. And, you know, few months later, you'll be doing something completely different. And certainly from that mid-80s period with us, we learned so much doing commercial work like that, as also alongside kind of how to run a business. The market's changed a bit, but I think to Pete's point, somebody's paying you to get practice. Why wouldn't you do it? There's also the moral issues about what you might advertise, and actually certain things that we don't do. But in terms of how do you get better and better and better, and how do you get pushed? Because it's very hard to, it's always good to have somebody else pushing you to higher levels, I think.
You should also be drawing some sort of cheese lobby support for all the Wallace and Gromit films you did.
Yes. Yep. We were quite successful in the cheese world, you know. There was in England, I'll come back to you in a minute. In England, there was a cheesemaker in the north of England, in Wensleydale, and Wensleydale is mentioned in the Wallace and Gromit film. And when we went there, there's a town called Hawes in the Yorkshire Dales where they make Wensleydale. And when we went there, Nick was treated as a god. He was carried shoulder high through the streets and stuff like that. I exaggerate slightly, but it was
you did for cheese like what Sideways did for wine.
Like that.
Go ahead.
I believe you started your pirate movie at the same time that Disney started their series. But at the same time that it took you to do one movie, they came out with 3 and 4. Could you talk about the challenges and some of the frustrations in that process?
Well, I always hotly deny that we're any slower than anybody else. I mean, no, absolutely not. We're not.
On a per movie basis.
Yeah, you know, like it. And I know it because we work with DreamWorks and then we work with Sony. And the fact is that in the feature film business, they usually take, in feature animation, they end up taking 5 years. I mean, nobody wants to take 5 years, but that's cut from first idea to finishing. It's just how it goes. It's just how it goes. And Shaun the Sheep was significantly quicker than that. So we honestly, I don't know what it is with stop motion, why people think it's slow, because it isn't.
Do you work faster now than you did before?
No, much slower now.
It's just, but it's more that you can be more elaborate now than you ever were before.
Yeah, and careful. I mean, when you see the early stuff, it's very, very approximate, you know. And I mean, when I started, you used to animate blind, which is to say you couldn't see what you'd done. It was all on the film in the camera, so you couldn't see. So the only way to, I think, the best way to work was to work quite fast and hold it in your head what you'd done. Now, and young animators, of course, can constantly check what they're doing on the screen, and as a result, they're way better, you know, but maybe too careful sometimes.
And you've played a little bit with the hybrid idea, or even doing all CG features. I mean, this is almost a rhetorical question because we love Aardman for its stop frame, but at the same time, why stay kind of in the old-fashioned realm? Or where's the line between kind of like, you know, how much CG to let creep into a movie like Pirates?
Yeah, it is. It's a constant discussion, you know, the whole time.
I've just launched a 30-minute
question,
I think. But,
you have. I mean, like I said, as you said, we've made 2 films which were entirely CG, so we have absolutely no fear of that medium. I know that people like the handmade look of what we do. People react to it very, very strongly. But I don't mind about hybridizing at all. You know, one of the practical things about stop motion, which is so obvious, I know that there's no motion blur by definition, because the character is never moving when you take, or almost, except on the monster train chase, actually. But it's not moving when the frame is taken, and often deliberately we animate it on doubles, which is you know, a series of double frames, not single frames, knowing that looks jerkier, looks, you know, more, well, I think looks more energetic. And you know, when people talk about smoothness, for example, a very smooth animator, I don't want a smooth animator. That's a horrible word to me. And nor do I want a perfect animator. I want a, you know, energetic, expressive animator.
Right. That's sort of that personality that we talked about that's baked into the Aardman mold.
Probably.
To wrap, what if you give us just a brief taste of what's in the pipeline? Nick's working on a movie. You guys have some TV stuff. Just let the crowd know what to look for from Aardman.
So Nick's working on his Early Man film, which will be out in sometime in 2018. Look forward to that.
A caveman story. With the most stupid-looking caveman you could possibly imagine.
Eyes very, very close together.
Eyes very close together. A whole race of idiots.
We're developing some TV work. We've just done a rather interesting piece with the BBC, which was a virtual reality CGI piece, actually based around refugees, which was shown up at the Sheffield Dockfest last week. That's a very new endeavour. It kind of follows on from the special delivery thing that we did. Quite a lot of feature ideas in development. A couple of them actually probably be more suitable for CG. 2 or 3 stop frame films which we're developing. That's the hard bit, I think. And going back to that question about features, that's where the time goes. Actually physically making them 15, 18 months, something like that, as most of the studios will take. The unknown quantity is how long it takes you to get to the point where you're ready to shoot the thing in terms of script and story reel. So what have we got? 5, 6
feature ideas.
Feature ideas brewing away there.
TV, a series of half-hour TV specials, which we're working on, and still more. Actually, we're still doing. In fact, one of the animators who is doing Morph is here when he should be at work. Get back to Bristol immediately. No, we're shooting 15 short films for Morph, so that's good.
All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have, but you guys are around. You know what they look like. Tackle them in the halls. And you're doing like a signing session?
Yes, we are tomorrow, I think. Yeah.
They'll be around. Please approach them with your questions. I'm freely giving of your...
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.